how important is culture?
It's the only thing. It's the only thing.
Okay.
And the reason I say it's the only thing is if you have the right people and they're aligned with each other, driving core values, driving core purpose, driving the VHAG, they all have like that kind of energy together, and you're bringing the right energy into the group, they're going to figure it out.
Mm.
My most important metric that I have all of our COO Alliance members over every other metric in their company, the number one metric is my employee net promoter score. How happy are my employees? If my employees are really happy, they'll make sure my customers are really happy.
Mm.
If
Mm.
my employees feel like the customer is number one, then my employees feel overworked and underpaid and
Mm.
stressed out. But if my employees know that I care about them, care about their humanity, care about their families, care about their life, care about their dreams, care about their frustrations, I'm there to support them and grow their skills and confidence and connections. They go, wow, you really care. I can scale the company with less people.
Yeah.
I don't even need 30 or 40% of the people I have. When I have the right people in the right seats and they all are really aligned culturally, they're going to figure all that stuff out.
Cameron Herold, it is a pleasure to welcome you to the Inner Entrepreneur podcast.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I've been familiar with your work for a while. I've been familiar with your podcast. I know you've written 5, maybe half a dozen books. I'm familiar with 2 of those, Vivid Vision, which really appeals to me, and The
Mm.
Second in Command. I think the idea of the Second in Command, the COO Alliance, that's all super. But what inspired me to reach out to you was I heard you speaking to the Entrepreneurs Organization, I think maybe earlier this year.
Yeah.
And you started with a story that struck me because I wasn't aware. I'd heard you speak before, but I hadn't heard the story. And the story, and you can correct me because I can't remember exactly what you said. The meeting wasn't recorded, but the story was of you being in an entrepreneurs meeting, I think in the 70s or 80s or something like that, and someone coming in to speak to you about vision, and that meeting effectively changing your life and changing how you saw the world.
No, it was not the 70s or 80s. I'm not that old.
No.
But it was 1998. It was in Vancouver, Canada,
Yeah.
and I was at an entrepreneurs organization event. It was an EO. I joined EO back in 1995, and I was a member for 5 years. I've since actually been paid to speak to EO in 29 countries,
Wow.
and YPO in about 12 countries. Anyway, we were invited down to this luncheon, and out of the 140 members of the chapter, only around 16 of us went to the event. Really poorly attended. And we got there, and this gentleman who was a high performance sports psychologist, he was a sports psychologist for Olympians, started talking about how he trained Olympic athletes in visualization. And he said, I want you to look into a crystal ball. And we're like, wow, this is going to be the most lame,
Yeah.
terrible, stupid
I am
session we've ever
sorry I
been to.
turned up. Yeah.
Right? Exactly. I'm out. I'm out. Give me a Guinness. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was a very profound change where we finally understood how to take visualization that they used in sport and how to apply it in the business world. And the shortcut I'll give you is this. If you've ever built a home or done a renovation on a home, at the end of the day, the homeowner is really the visionary. And then the contractor is kind of the leadership team, and the employees make the vision come true. But if the contractor isn't clear on what the homeowner wants the kitchen to look like or the home to look like, doesn't matter how much time or money you give them or how skilled they are as contractors, they can't build your dream home if they don't know what your dream home looks like. So they need to be clear on your vision. And if you hire a bad team, they'll never make your vision come true, right? They just don't have the skills or the competence to make your vision come true. So we started to understand that the visionary, the CEO's job was to explain what their company looked like, act like, and felt like 3 years in the future, and create a document that becomes a 4 or 5 page written description of your company. And that kind of is what the future state of the vivid vision looks like. The end result is you can give that vision to your team, and they can then put the plans in place to make your vision come true. And then you make sure that they have the skills and the resources and the money to make the plan come true. You get out of their way, much like you do as a 1 hour, CEO, and the team then executes against those plans without ever having to talk to you as the entrepreneur. So the session became a very, very powerful tool. I then codified that, and I've been speaking about it and talking about it and writing about it for the last, 24 years.
There's so much in there because you start with the vision, but as you say, you have to have the right people, and then you have to have people who can execute on that. In those 25 odd years speaking about this, um, how many people have the wherewithal to implement the vision?
Well, it's not even that. It's that what tends to happen is the entrepreneur either tries to turn the vision into the set of plans, which isn't their skill set,
Okay.
and that's not the document, right? This is not the homeowner is not skilled enough to create blueprints.
Mm.
There's no homeowner on the planet that can
Mm.
dream the great dream of what their home should look like and create the blueprints to make their vision come true. So when entrepreneurs try to come up with all the plans, they start stumbling and getting frustrated. That tends to be a stumbling block for them.
Mm.
Or they tend to not share the vision with enough people, right? So it's they kind of keep that vision to themselves and they don't share it frequently enough, or they just get frustrated that it's not happening enough and they change and move away from that vision, which would, be similar to the employee showing up building your home
Mm.
and the homeowner expecting it to be completed a week later. No, you've got to build the foundation, then you have to put up the walls, then you have to put in the electrical and the plumbing, then you have to put in the sheetrock or the drywall. Like, it takes time for each stage of that vision to open up. And a lot of entrepreneurs get frustrated that
Mm.
it's not happening fast enough. Well, they don't realize it really is a 3-year vision that takes 3 years to really open up and come true. That tends to be where they fall short.
Yeah. And that was one thing struck me because I know you now have a course on Mind Valley,
Mm,
which I recently took. Um, and I often wondered, particularly, I'm going to say visionaries, and that's a very big word, but entrepreneurs, people with ideas and imagination, do you find that they often don't have the patience? They want the excitement of the starting, but they don't want the actual hard work of actually seeing it through.
yeah, and again, I go back to that analogy of building a home. I remember building a home in Vancouver, Canada 20 years ago and getting super excited and showing up at the property and they were still working on the foundation. So
Yeah,
I went away and couple, maybe 3 or 4 days later, I was super excited and I drove back and it was still the foundation.
yeah,
And it felt like for 3 months, nothing was happening. And then one day I went back and all of a sudden there were walls going up. I'm like, whoa, you know, but I wanted to see the Wolf stove and the Sub-Zero fridge and the beautiful cabinets. And it was frustrating to have to wait for some of those things to happen. But the core of what they were building, the foundation of what they were building was so solid that when they were finally able to put the beautiful parts in, it was built on very
yeah,
solid foundations. And I think if entrepreneurs can wrap their head around the fact that the foundational underpinnings of your company are things like your core values, your core purpose, your BHAG, your 1 year plan, all the people systems, the meeting rhythms, the cool, fun stuff comes later, right?
mm,
So it's keeping them focused on building the foundational things first and keeping the entrepreneur focused on working on a couple of parts of the business that they're really good at, that they love doing, so they don't interfere on all the
mm,
other things. You don't want the homeowner coming in telling the electrician how to do work.
yeah,
You need the homeowner to stay focused on homeowner stuff, like,
yeah,
go pick out the tiles that we're not going to be using for 3 months.
yeah, and leave us alone. It's funny because the house I live in, we also built about 20 years ago or so, and at the time I was just ferociously busy, and I would only come here. I mean, so I left home in the dark and I returned home in the dark. So my wife looked after our 3 kids, and effectively we lived not too far from our building, and she managed the build. Um, and she would then call me and go, "Oh, we did this today." So I would drive by at 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, because there were no lights yet, put my headlights on just to see what progress was made. Often
Right.
I didn't even notice what progress had been made. So when I went home, I could go, great. But what's interesting is, a lot of people say to us, "Oh, would you do it again?" And I go, "Absolutely not." My wife goes, "Absolutely yes."
Yeah.
And now that you're talking about it, I can see that that's the difference between maybe the CEO and the COO. I mean, my wife was the COO of that project. I would have been useless in the detail, but
Right.
she was actually a great asset to the builder, because the builder needs to ask you lots of questions. What goes here? What goes there? And she was available and she loved the detail of that.
Yeah, she loved the detail,
Yeah,
she was good at the detail,
yeah,
it gave her purpose, she
mm,
had time to consider all of those
yeah.
things. So that's the right person in the right seat,
mm,
right? And that is very much the COO's role. It's the reason I even started this COO Alliance. I have a
mm,
large global community like EO,
mm,
but no entrepreneurs are allowed to join. It's
mm,
only their second in
mm,
command, right? Whether it's a COO or managing director, president, whatever. We have all of these COOs that are members of it. It's giving them the skills and the confidence and the connections so they can make their entrepreneurs' visions come true.
mm,
So many entrepreneurs are working on growing their skills, but they forget that if they invest in their people skills, if they invest in their leadership teams, their COO skills, invest in their connections, invest in their confidence, they're the ones that are going to make your dream come true. The homeowner should not go out and try to become the best electrician.
yeah,
They should hire the best electrician,
yeah,
right? The homeowner should not go out and become the best plumber. They
mm.
should hire the best plumbers. But if entrepreneurs forget that, that's why they get frustrated and have to micromanage these projects that are going sideways is their people aren't aligned with what they want them to build, and they don't have the right people, in the right seats doing the build.
So there are about 50 members in EO Ireland, and I've had the pleasure to meet many of them. Most of them are small to medium sized businesses. There are a few what I would call large businesses. So large businesses, maybe I'm going to say you might have called this large business in the States, but I would call it large business here, 25, 40, 60 million plus. But I think most of the EO members in Ireland are a lot smaller than that. I think I read somewhere, could have been the EO site, that the average business among EO is 4 million. So
Mm.
I'm wondering. So I'm wondering, the businesses you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, are they? I know you've been involved in building, scaling some very large businesses. So do you work with those smaller businesses, or does this only apply to large
Oh yeah.
businesses?
No, our CO Alliance members, the criteria for membership is 2 million in revenue for
Okay.
to someone to join,
Mm,
and it's 5 million for them to attend an in-person event.
okay.
So members get to come to the 2 hour events online every
Mm,
month via Zoom, and we have the 1 hour AI expert calls
mm,
online every month via Zoom. So as long as you're the second in command of a company doing 2 million or greater, our average size company is around 30 million. Our
okay.
biggest is around 400 million.
Mm,
We at least have the 2 million criteria to join.
mm,
And then the reason we have the 5 million criteria for the in person is we cap our in person events at 60 people. So
mm,
today, showing up in Vancouver, Canada, I've got 60 COOs from all over the world coming in. And then we have one in September at MIT at
mm.
Endicott House, where EO holds their entrepreneurial master's program. We host an event there too.
So how does it apply to someone who employs 10 people, or does it apply? I mean,
It
at what
doesn't
it doesn't.
It doesn't matter how many employees you
Okay.
have as long as you're the second in command to the entrepreneur,
Okay.
right? So it's almost like a husband and wife.
Yeah.
You can have men's groups and you can have women's groups.
Mm,
As long as you know which group you belong in, that's the key. So if you're the second in command to a company and you do at least 2 million and greater, you're
mm,
the second in command to the CEO. You could have 5 employees, you could have
yeah.
500 employees, you could have freelancers. It doesn't really matter.
So again, my experience is a lot of smaller businesses, and that's good. But a lot of the businesses, I have a COO, and as I said before we came on this call, it was one of the best things I did for the business, and one of the best things I did for myself personally.
Of
One of the best
course.
things I did for myself personally, because it freed me for the business, and I've been in the business 40 years. So it freed me from the business. And the second thing is that a business reaches a point where, I think, if you've been a leader, so I've been in the business 40 years, and I've been, you know, CEO, managing director for 25 years plus. And that's what happens when you're in an owner business. I don't think it would happen in any other business, but when you're an owner, that's what happens in your business. You tend to be at the top forever. And you realize that you may no longer be the best person to be making all those day-to-day decisions. So for me, putting in COO was one of the smartest things I did.
Of
But,
course.
but many of the businesses I meet, they don't do that. They haven't put it in.
Yeah, it's hard often for the entrepreneur to free themselves up to let people do their job, partially because they don't know what else they're going to do,
Yeah.
partially because often the entrepreneur has put their entire identity into the company and they
Mm.
have no life, they have no hobbies,
Yeah.
they have no relationship with their spouse or their kids or themselves. So the only good feelings and dopamine they get is running their business.
Mm.
Um, I work with clients that are very different than that, and I'm very different than that. That I have a lot of other things that I want to be able to do, and
Yeah.
business serves that for me. It's
Mm.
not my reason for being. It's just
It
part of who
feels.
I am and part of
Yeah.
what I do. Yeah.
When you say you work with people who think operating differently, I imagine a lot of those entrepreneurs would love to be able to transition to that. I mean, would love the opportunity to. I mean, like, because I know in your visioning process, I've heard you discuss using that in all areas of your life. So I feel there may be people who I'm going to say have a vision for the business that includes them, but they've been so engrossed in that all of their lives that they've never actually expanded it to look at two things. One is, what would that vision look like in other areas of my life? And now that I know that, how is it I need to run my business? Because I get the impression you're very intentional about how you run what you do so that
Yeah.
it serves the rest of your life.
Well, and I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So my father was an entrepreneur. Both sets of grandparents were entrepreneurs. For the last 25 years, my brother, my sister, and myself have all run our own companies.
Mm.
So all we've ever really known was being an entrepreneur. But I remember one of the very early lessons my dad gave me. We went to the golf club and he showed me all the people Wednesday at 12 o'clock that were coming in
Mm.
to play golf. It's like Bruce McCullough owns a car dealership. Ted Coe owns an accounting firm. Like, and I could still rattle off a bunch of
Mm.
these names of the people. Craig McDermott and Liz McDermott own Pizza Hut restaurants. And he showed me all these people coming to play golf at the same time as we were playing. That wasn't the lesson. We played golf. At the end of the day, we are sitting having our fries and gravy and drinking my cherry Coke. And he shows me all the people coming in. Oh, that guy works for Bruce McCullough. That guy works for Ted Coe. This guy manages one of Craig's
Mm.
restaurants. He said, "You notice the difference between who came to play golf today at 12 and who came to play golf today at the end of the day?" And I said, "Yeah, everybody that runs their own business plays golf in the middle of the day."
Mm. Yeah.
And he said, "If you run your own business, you can do what you want when you want, and nobody has to tell you what to do."
Mm.
So for me, being an entrepreneur was about free time and hobbies, and the money always came second to that.
Mm.
And the money came.
Yeah.
My dad made a lot of money too,
Mm.
but it was never about the money. The second reason why we build companies is to give us a sense of purpose and pride. It's like we're still looking for that accomplishment. And many entrepreneurs grew up as the very average students in school. We were the B minuses, the C students. We were always told to work harder and pay attention, and we couldn't get the good grades. So we really got emotionally beat up by the school system for 15, 20 years.
Mm.
I certainly did, where
As
I
did
was
I.
always
Yeah, as did I.
so I'm still looking for some praise from somebody. I'm still looking for that gold star. Well, at some point when you've got your business and you're up and running and you've got that feeling of success, you've accomplished that. So if you've got the money and I've got the accomplishment, it should be about that free time. But if I don't know what else to do with my free time, we tend to not want
Yeah.
that. So I think the really good entrepreneurs are the ones that know, if I hire that second in command, if I grow the skills of my people, it'll give me free time. They'll be able to make 3 or 4 times more than it costs me to even have them.
Yeah.
So if I'm paying them 300,000 a year, they'll probably generate $1 million in profit. So
Mm.
there's the upside, and I can get all the stuff off my plate that I suck at or I don't even love to do, and I don't need to get a tutor for it. In school we were always told to go get a tutor.
Yeah.
You're bad at French, get a French tutor. I'm like, now I'm still bad at French and I don't even like French people.
Yeah.
But if they'd said, "Wow, you're really good at speaking, go get a speaking coach," I would have been amazing at speaking, right?
Yeah.
You and I have a mutual friend, Philip McKernan, that we know from Dublin.
Yes.
Um,
He was on the
Philip,
podcast. Yeah.
he's an incredible speaker.
Absolutely.
But I'll bet you when he was in grade school, no one said, "You're an incredible speaker, get a speaking coach." They probably said, "You're really bad at history, go get a history tutor."
Mm.
Why? So entrepreneurs tend to think that we have to be good at everything instead of realizing, no, we actually get to delegate everything except genius.
It seems to me that you had a wonderful example in your father, because I also grew up with entrepreneurial parents, and but my father worked incredibly hard. And I remember, I'm trying to think what age I was, maybe 19, 20 years of age, uh, coming out of the city one evening with my girlfriend in the car after going to a movie or something, and driving by our office, which was my habit because I'd started work for my father. My father was heading off on holidays, and it's now maybe 11:30 midnight or something as we were leaving the city, and my father's car is parked outside, and the light is on. And this is how I'll not say he worked that way all the time, but he worked very, very, very hard. So the example I was shown about running a business was the opposite. The example I was shown was that business owners work 80 hours a week and they have all this
Mhm.
responsibility. So it was a very different example. What that led me to was kind of not quite following that, but working very, very hard and reaching a point of almost burning out before I said there has to be another way. And that was about 20 years ago. But when I reached that point of going, there had to be another way, I struggled to find an example.
Mm.
I like, there wasn't a Cameron Herold speaking. I struggled to find someone in my environment that was saying, okay, Paul, you've been doing it wrong, and this is how you do it.
I feel like I have always looked for the cheat sheets.
Mm,
I've always looked for that path of least resistance. The way that as a ski racer, you kind of take the path that the terrain gives you, and
mm,
it's faster than pushing through the harder parts of the terrain. You kind of let it work for you. It's like the way water goes down a mountain. And I see these flies trying to get out the window, and the flies keep banging their head on the window, trying harder and harder to get out the window, and they all end up dead on the windowsill. If the fly would ever just turn and go out the door, take the shortcut that's right there. So I've always looked for the shortcuts. I've
mm,
always looked for the cheat sheets. I also realized at a very young age that me working hard to get good grades in school was never going to work.
mm,
The harder I worked, the more I just got frustrated, and I still got C minus. Like I
mm,
just couldn't get past 65%.
yeah.
My brain didn't remember stuff that way. I was always preoccupied with other things. God, I was running businesses from the time I was 7 years old. I could tell you 10 different business ventures that I had between 7 and 15. I had 12 full-time employees when I was 20. So
Wow.
I was so preoccupied while I was in school that working hard was never going to work for me.
Mm,
But finding the cheat sheets, finding the copies of the exam in the teacher's garbage basket, flirting with my teaching assistant, copying off people that went before me, reading the cheats at the back of every chapter. Like I found the shortcuts, and I realized there's shortcuts in business.
mm,
So many companies have spent millions of dollars figuring out what to do. I'll just do what they're doing,
yeah.
right? I'll get a great email from somebody. I'll be like, "That's amazing." I'll just copy and paste it and edit it, and
Mm.
we'll run with that email, right? I'll see a good ad that somebody's running, and we'll just take that ad and we'll R&D, rip off and duplicate. So that's just my,
So,
yeah,
so clearly, you're tremendously entrepreneurial and have been since you're in
yeah,
short pants. So it's in your nature. I suppose it was in your family. So it's in your nature to be entrepreneurial. Yet you had huge success personally before what you're doing now as a COO.
yeah.
So
I was COO for my best friend's company, and it was a very entrepreneurial organization. It was also the fourth company. So I got well known for building a company called 1-800 Got Junk,
yeah,
but it was the fourth company that I built.
okay.
I was a co-founder of a franchising group, which became Boyd Auto Body and Gerber Auto Collision. It's the largest collision repair chain now in the world.
Mm,
I opened the West Coast of the United States for what became the largest house painting company on the planet, College Pro Painters, and was a franchisee for them. And then I was also the second in command for a private currency company. I was president of a
mm,
private currency. So I'd always been in these entrepreneurial ventures, kind of as that, yes, hired gun, but I felt like they were my company and they
mm,
were entrepreneurial in nature.
mm.
And then when I left Got Junk 18 years ago, I've been running my own company for the last 18 years.
Do we want our COOs to be entrepreneurial?
Great
Also,
question.
this is what
No,
I'm wondering. No.
no.
Okay.
I want my entrepreneurs to be what I call interdependent, that they're dependent enough on the systems that exist to follow them,
Mm,
and they're independent enough that if we don't have the systems in place, they'll figure out systems to allow us to
mm,
scale. I
okay.
want them to be entrepreneurial, like entrepreneurial enough, but no, I don't want them to be entrepreneurs. Most COOs don't have the entrepreneurial DNA, right? They don't have that core entrepreneurial
Mm,
DNA makeup to even be an entrepreneur. They don't have that risk tolerance. They don't have that bipolar nature. They're not ADD enough to see everything that's happening. And most have no desire to be an entrepreneur. You
mm,
look at Sheryl Sandberg, the COO for Facebook, for
mm,
Mark Zuckerberg for 15 years. She's never wanted to be an entrepreneur. She
Yeah.
was quite happy being a COO. Most COOs don't see themselves as a lesser version of a CEO.
Yeah.
They see it as a very different role, very different DNA makeup. Most of them, when I do personality profiles, one of the ones we do with our COO Alliance members is the Kolbe profile. And the Kolbe profile shows you how you like to initiate and start projects. Most of our entrepreneurs are quick starts, meaning they start and they figure it out later. They figure
Mm.
it out as they go.
Yeah.
They know that momentum creates momentum.
Mm.
Most of the COOs start or initiate a project by putting a plan in place, like a system or a playbook,
Mm.
or they ask a lot of questions and they do a lot of the research to truly understand it, and then they start. That's a
Mm.
very different DNA
Yeah.
type.
Well, it's interesting you to say that because a lot of people who talk about having a business that you run, and that's one thing you said with your father on the golf course. He was pointing at these people run their business, and I think firstly there's a distinction between running a business and operating your business, because probably a lot of the entrepreneurs in the entrepreneurs organization, they operate their business. I mean, they're hands on every day, which I think is a different skill to actually running a business. But when people ask me about making that transition, I find 90% of the conversation is about putting the systems and processes in place. Now, I'm interested in what you
Mm.
have to say about this, because my response is always, I was lousy. I'm lousy at system and process. So I
I am
didn't do
too.
that.
For me, it's about the people.
Precisely. Yeah.
As long as I show the people
Yeah.
the direction that we're taking the company, the core
Yeah.
values that I want to build, the core purpose of why
Yeah.
we're doing it, the vivid vision of what we're building, and then I say to them, I want the right people in the
Yeah.
right seats, and then I want them to put the systems in place. Like I want systems, not for me. I
Yeah.
want systems for them and for
Yeah.
predictability and for scale.
Mm.
And I want easy systems that don't require an MBA to figure them out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not the person to put that in place. So I have to be the one to put vision and culture in place and help the people put the plans and the strategy and everything else in place to make it come true.
Yes, that's pretty much exactly what I've done. And I kind of say that, I'm terrible at putting systems in place. I'm not a systems person. I
Yeah,
give you a big picture, but I'm not a systems person. But I also feel that if you have systems, like if you have phenomenal systems and terrible people, it won't work.
won't work.
But
Yeah,
if you have terrible systems and great people, they'll
they'll
fix
figure it out.
it.
Yeah.
They'll throw the
Well,
systems.
that's why Jim Collins in his book Good to Great talks about first who, then where,
Yeah.
or then why, right? Like first who, then what. You really need to get the right people in the right seats, and they'll
Mm.
figure out how to make it come true.
Yeah. How important is culture?
It's the only thing. It's the only thing.
Okay.
And the reason I say it's the only thing is if you have the right people and they're aligned with each other, driving core values, driving core purpose, driving the VHAG, they all have like that kind of energy together, and you're bringing the right energy into the group, they're going to figure it out.
Mm.
My most important metric that I have all of our COO Alliance members over every other metric in their company, the number one metric is my employee net promoter score. How happy are my employees? If my employees are really happy, they'll make sure my customers are really happy.
Mm.
If
Mm.
my employees feel like the customer is number one, then my employees feel overworked and underpaid and
Mm.
stressed out. But if my employees know that I care about them, care about their humanity, care about their families, care about their life, care about their dreams, care about their frustrations, I'm there to support them and grow their skills and confidence and connections. They go, wow, you really care. I can scale the company with less people.
Yeah.
I don't even need 30 or 40% of the people I have. When I have the right people in the right seats and they all are really aligned culturally, they're going to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear you say that, because I mean, I have been in this business all of my life, and we've two businesses, so I only have experience of what I do, and you've obviously experience of engaging with a huge amount of businesses. But it's interesting. I'm called in once, twice a year, maybe, to speak to the staff, and certainly as we close up for Christmas every year, my COO always says, "Will you come in and speak to the staff?" And last year, as I spoke to them, I said that I was like a Netflix series on repeat, because when I'm called in to speak to them, I figure a different story to tell them every year, but I only talk about one thing: culture. And I always say to them, I know I only talk about culture, but because in my view, if I get culture right, like nothing else matters. If you've culture right and you've great people, they just figure everything out. Now, when I say that, I feel because my experience is limited, I haven't worked in more than a couple of companies, I kind of go, am I simplistic about it? And it's very reaffirming for you to say that is a secret. If you have the culture, it kind of fixes everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like that's all I obsessed about. So when I started as the second in command at 1-800 Got Junk 24 years ago,
Mm,
there were three things that I decided to put in place. Number one, as I raised our prices by 40%,
mm,
because no one was making money. The company wasn't, the franchisees weren't,
mm,
the guys in the trucks weren't, no one was making money.
mm.
So I raised our prices 40%. We positioned ourselves as the FedEx of junk removal or the Starbucks of junk removal. We were going to be premium priced and build a great brand and service in an industry. That was number one. Number two was we had no marketing dollars. We had no budget. So we went after free press. We got as much public relations coverage, whether it was bloggers or magazines or
Mm.
newspapers or radio or being on Oprah or nowadays podcasts. We got all of that coverage, which we could then share with our list. By the way, social media didn't even exist when we were scaling 1-800 Got Junk.
Yeah.
So free PR, if we had Facebook, wow, we would have really grown
Mm,
quickly. But that was number two. But number three was we wanted to build a little bit more than a business and a little bit less than a religion. I wanted to be in the zone of a cult.
mm.
And that's what we built was a cult, that culture. And we studied things that were like cults that didn't go too far, right? And so when you build and when you really understand what culture is not the massages and the free lunches. Those are perks.
Yeah.
Culture is an alignment with purpose, an alignment with core values, having a common cause, getting rid of all the negative, toxic energy,
Mm,
junk people. Do you know that tonight at our COO Alliance event, and our members don't even know this, but they won't see your podcast before the event starts in
mm.
6 hours, so it doesn't matter. We're showing the movie The Secret. I'm
Wow.
making all of my franchisee or all of our members of COO Alliance watch the movie The Secret. And I'm telling them it's a little bit cheesy, it's a little
Mm,
bit materialistic, but we're going to study it. And tomorrow we're going to talk about all of the lessons in the movie and how do we apply those to business,
mm.
right? How do we take these laws of quantum mechanics and energy and culture and bring that into our organization? And when CEOs understand that, they asked Herb Kelleher, the founder of Southwest Airlines, how do you get all your employees to be so happy? He said, we hire happy people,
Yeah.
right? You can't train a grumpy, negative person to be happy, but you can take a happy person and align them and they just make stuff happen. So culture is that kind of stuff.
I think the other thing is you have to have the courage then to remove when I learned this lesson about culture, which is again maybe about 15 years ago, and I was blessed to have a mentor that taught me this, and it was very different to how I'd approached business before. But one of the biggest things I needed at that time was courage, because the culture was pretty shit in my business at the time, and I had to look and go, this is the new culture, and 30% of the people in here will not want this culture. It's not their nature, and you have to have the courage to remove those people in the business and not
Yeah.
tolerate it. And
Look, if a doctor said to you or I today, hey, Paul, you've got a cancerous tumor on your lung, how long would you leave it there? You'd be like, get that thing out today.
tomorrow morning, yeah.
Can we go tonight? Can I get like, how about right now? Like
Yeah.
skip golf. Let's get right.
Yeah.
Well, a grumpy negative person, an underperforming person, a person that's sucking up all of your time and energy in your business is like a cancerous tumor.
They are, yeah.
Get them out of and for most often, you don't even have to rehire for them. They weren't doing anything anyway.
Yeah.
They were taking up all of your time.
Yeah.
So often we spend our time with our bottom people instead of spending time with our best people.
Mm.
So my great uncle who was up in Sligo and Ross's Point was a golf coach. And one of his golfers that he used to coach was Rory McIlroy.
Mm.
Now, we all know what Rory McIlroy went off to do and become one of the best golfers
Yeah.
on the planet. And I assure you, Colm, who is my great uncle, spent a lot more time coaching uh, McIlroy than he did coaching all the other golfers,
Yeah, of course.
right? Because the A player golfer is
Yeah.
where you put all your best time
Mm.
into. But as CEOs, we often spend all of our time with our underperformers,
Yeah.
our toxic people, our negative people, and the A players feel neglected.
I remember sitting in my office many years ago with my COO, and we were having meeting after meeting, and I remember saying, because we had a few key people that were causing trouble in the business at the time, and I remember saying to him, have you noticed that we met a lot at the time because we had issues to sort out, and I said to him, have you noticed that 90% of our conversations are dealing with these problem people? How would it be if we could free up those meetings? We weren't talking about internal problems, we were talking about how can we develop this business.
Yeah.
It's alarming. And now when I meet with my team, it's all talk about, what can we do? What do we need to fix? It's never, we don't have problem people in the organization anymore.
Well, but now do we have problem clients? Can we get rid of our negative customers, our
Yeah.
grumpy customers?
Yeah.
Can we solve the actual root problem of why
Mm,
customers are unhappy? Can we set better expectations?
mm,
Can we have better FAQs on the website so they
mm.
can solve their own problems? So often we want to work harder to help our customers instead of fixing
I agree.
the root problems there, right? What about our partners? Do
Mm,
we have A-level partners? Marketing providers, IT providers, finance,
yeah.
accountants. But often we settle for Bs. Oh, my accountant's okay, my
Mm,
lawyer's okay, my marketing provider's okay. Okay isn't get you there,
yeah.
right? Why do we have to hire an A-level team and then be okay with B-level partners and customers who are Cs? So the A players are racehorses, the B players are workhorses. The C players have to go to the glue factory,
Mm.
but that has to include employees, partners, and suppliers as well, and customers.
And I think you have to be ruthless because you used the example of, if you found you had a cancer, how long would you leave it? What you wouldn't do, which is most business owners do, is you wouldn't hope it would improve. You
Correct.
you wouldn't 6 months for you. If your doctor says you have cancer, you don't go, well, look, I'll come back in 6 months and let's see if it's better. You wouldn't. But that is what people do. They hope it will improve. And I also remember.
Hope is not a strategy,
No, no, hopium, as I heard someone calling it. It's not a
right?
strategy. The other thing I remember when I appointed my COO, and that was my task to establish that position in the business and get him started. But then I looked at the rest of my senior team, and I realized they weren't up to scratch. They weren't the A players, and I realized that if I left them on the team, I was bringing my COO into a very difficult job because he was going to have to try and manage them. And I realized that this guy's taking on a lot of responsibility, and I want to make success as easy as possible for him. And so we upgraded our biz dev manager, and we upgrade our financial our FC in the business, and it made a radical difference, and it made a huge difference. But it always strikes me so many people will tolerate per performance, per behavior in a business, and it saps up so much of their energy and so much of their time.
Well, I learned this lesson when I was running my first business back when I was 20 years old, that a leader's core job is to grow people.
Mm,
Right? Our job is to grow their skills and their confidence and their connections so that they can do more. So as soon as we identify we have a mid-level team that doesn't have the skills, we can either replace them
mm,
or we can work really hard to give them the skills.
mm,
And when we hire a new person, we have to recognize that if we double the size of the company, they'd better be doubling their skills. So
mm,
you can hire a great person today, but if you don't keep investing in their skills, right? It's why my online course is called Invest in Your Leaders. If you go to investinyourleaders.com, I have 12 core leadership skills that anyone managing people needs to be good at. If you don't grow them in those skills, you're going to be replacing them in 12
mm,
months or 18 months because they won't have the capacity to scale your company. And a clear sign of that is if you've got managers who keep saying, hire more people,
mm,
that tends to be the solution for every problem for managers that don't have skills. For managers that do have skills, they tend to say no more often. They tend to optimize work and workflows better. They tend to look to automations. They tend to outsource and delegate better. They can handle conflict, which is why they can say
mm.
no. But the mid-level manager tends to just want to throw effort and bodies at stuff. So you build all this complexity inside of your business because your people don't know how to use situational leadership. They don't know how to do coaching. They don't know delegation. They don't know how to do proper job interviews. So they build all this complexity without even knowing they are. And then the CEO is always trying to manage them and help them and hold them accountable. It's because you've got the wrong people in the wrong seats, or your company's outgrown them.
I think the other thing I noticed, and you mentioned this earlier about people confusing culture and perks and reward, and I've noticed this with a lot of people that they have a per culture per performance in the business and they reward it. They go, well, if we brought in pizzas on a Friday and if we put cokes in the fridge, and my example, I always use the example of, I have three sons and going, when they were kids, if they're adults now, but if they misbehaved, did I go and buy them an ice cream and say, here's the
Right.
ice cream, please don't misbehave? Or do I go, if the ice cream is the reward for good behavior, not
I
it's not how I
yeah,
convince you.
I watched my sister live this in a very, very profound way. My sister was running her own company. This was around 10 years ago. Her kids were maybe 10, 12, and 14. And she had a lot of money. She was making a lot of money in her business. And they had a beautiful summer home and a beautiful winter chalet and their really nice home and trips to Europe. And one of her kids was kind of bragging to one of their friends about how much money the family had. And my sister pulled her aside and said, if I ever effing hear you talking to your friends like that again about
Mm,
what we have,
mm,
I will sell it all.
yeah,
I don't need it.
yeah,
I will sell every single bit of it. I want you to realize how hard it works, how lucky we are, how
mm,
fortunate we are. And if I ever hear any ego behind any of this stuff, right? And it's kind of like the kids who grow up very spoiled versus the kids who grow up with core values. That's what you're trying to build inside of your company
mm,
is the core values, the core focus, the core purpose, the BHAG, the vivid vision, the caring about each other and being empathetic for each other and caring about each other's lives, caring about our customers. But if you're just showing up because the free lunch is there, or we get massages, or
mm,
we have these
yeah.
beautiful offices, you're missing the point, and it comes back to bite us.
Can you talk just a little bit more about how someone would create a vision for their life? Just and I know we're short in time, so I know it's a big topic, but just on the highlights, how does someone start to create a vision for their life?
So I actually not only wrote a vivid vision for my business,
Mm,
I wrote a vivid vision for me as a person.
mm,
So I have a 3-year vivid vision
mm,
that describes Cameron Herold in what I'm like as a father, as a friend, as a lover, as a confidant, as a spouse, what my fitness is like, what my finances are
mm,
like, what my travel and vacations are like, what I do for fun. So I have this 4 or 5 page description of me.
mm,
And then my wife and I wrote one for us as a married couple,
mm,
and we merged ours together. So we have a merged vision of our relationship as a couple together. And then we figure out how many people can we share that with and how can we make that come true. That was a starting point. Number two is we put bucket lists in place. We each wrote a bucket list of all the stuff we want to do or try or experience before we die. And
mm,
number three is we put all of our family time into our calendar first. So we put in our vacations, our time with each other, our time with ourselves, our time with our kids, our bucket list stuff, and then we build the business around it. And then lastly is I recognize that my to-do list does not have my name at the top of it. It doesn't say Cameron's to-do list, it just says to-do list.
yeah.
So I'm going to delegate as many of the things on my to-do list as possible. If I ever find something on my to-do list, I'm like, oh, I don't have anyone I can delegate that to. I find someone to delegate it to and I grow their skills and confidence so they
Mm,
can do it. Like I don't want to do the work. And then the last part is I shut it down every day at 5 o'clock and I don't work on weekends
mm,
because I recognize that working nights and working weekends is a lie, that catching up is a lie. And I might allow myself one time a quarter
mm,
to work at night to catch up, to actually need to crank through some stuff. But I really delegate everything except genius and I bake in everything that matters first. I even have a tattoo on my arm that's in Hindi that says walking each other home, that basically reminds me that none of this stuff matters. This is just what we do to make a buck,
yeah.
right? What really matters is everything else. And at the end of the day, we're all going to end up as a kebab.
And I think of that at times. I think, and we all go the one way, and when I think about that, the only answer, because you can't answer that. The only answer I come up with is, well, I don't know how that makes sense. We all come to an end at some stage. The only sense I can make for it is try and live well. Try and use that time. But as I'm listening to talk, I'm wondering this, because I'm wondering what our listeners think. Are some people thinking Cameron Herold gets to live this way because he's privileged? And I'm wondering, or is
Fuck
Cameron,
that. That was a choice, man.
yeah, or is Cameron privileged because he chose to live this way?
At the end of the day, we can all spend less, right? We can all live within our means.
Yes.
We can
Yeah.
like your bucket list of 100 things don't have to cost any money. It can
Mm,
be stuff you want to do in the city you live in, experiences you want to
yeah.
have in the cities you live in. You can go buy a guitar at a thrift store and go on YouTube and learn how to play guitar for free.
Yeah.
You can go hike, you can go do art walks, you can learn how to cook. Like there's all this stuff that happens. So, but we don't. We end up wasting our time and coming up with excuses. Getting exercise, you don't have to have a gym membership. You can get your ass outside and use, the 7-minute workout app. There's so many things that people can do to have a better life, but we don't because we either become victims or um, we give up, right? Whereas I'm just not going to give up. I want to have a better life. I just recently added a couple of things to my bucket list, and one is how many countries I've played golf in, and another one is how many countries I've taken cooking classes in.
Mm,
And I've already been to 78 countries, but now I'm like, okay, what am I doing in these countries? What else can I add to my
mm,
experiences? So I just played golf in Australia last week. That's country number 10 that I've played golf in. 2 weeks I'm playing golf in New Zealand while I'm there, so I'll be country number 3. And I just want to keep adding more cool, fun stuff to my list of things to do.
So you get to live a very rich life, but I think what you're saying is that you don't need to be rich necessarily to live that life. Maybe to play golf all over the world, but but if someone wants to play golf every week, there's a public course near them, I'm sure.
Okay, well, here's something else. Like I could choose to play golf, but I also don't go out and spend a lot of money on clothes all the time.
Yeah. Mm,
I've sold everything 4 years ago to live globally,
mm,
but I don't have mortgages and insurance and property taxes and maintenance anymore. I have Airbnbs.
mm,
I don't have cars and car rentals and car insurance and car payments anymore. I have Lime scooters and I walk.
mm,
I don't go on vacations because I'm living on the road traveling anyway.
mm,
So I'm offsetting things, and I don't go out. I used to have 14 belts.
mm.
Now I have 2. I have a brown one and a black one.
What more
You
do
know,
you
I used
need?
like I only have 2 pairs of jeans and a pair of beige pants and a pair of joggers. Those are the only 4 pair of trousers that I own.
Yeah.
Most people have got 20 pairs of pants in their closet.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So what I do is I'll choose to play golf and not go out and buy more clothing constantly that I don't even need. Or I don't have 4 big screen TVs anymore because I just watch movies on my laptop.
My selfish question for you before we wrap up is, for those people listening who have COOs, and what's in the COO Alliance for them? What does a COO get out of a COO Alliance? It's a purely selfish question. What I have you
Yeah,
say?
yeah. Well, the CEO gets freedom and confidence to know that the person that they're having run their company is going to have the skills and the confidence and the connections
Mm,
to make their dreams come true.
mm,
For the COO, it's that they shed the imposter syndrome, they shed the frustrations, they learn how to build a better relationship with their CEO. They have a team of people they can turn to that are their mastermind community.
yeah.
They don't feel as alone in their day to day. They come back with ideas on how to scale their company or how to save their company money. So yeah, it's huge connections. We actually give everybody at what we call a 10x guarantee, that it only costs $5,900 a year to put your member into the CO Alliance. We guarantee you're going to get at least $59,000 in savings, but it's more like $59,000 a month.
Yeah.
Most of our members are generating $500,000 in new ideas to grow their company's revenue
Mm,
or cost cutting. So it's really a huge upside for
mm.
everybody.
This phenomenal confidence to give that guarantee.
We've only ever had 3 members in 8 years take us back on it.
Yeah.
2 of them were just jerks, and I'm like, fine, take your money, I don't
Yeah.
care. One was like, you know what? I can see how that didn't work for you. You're a blue collar manufacturing, making farm equipment, and I can see that for the 12 months where you showed up and you tried your best. Yeah, I get it. There wasn't enough that was value for you, and I
Yeah.
gave it, and I knew that the money really mattered to them, so we
Yeah.
gave the money back.
Yeah.
But out of 575 members, only 3 have ever asked for their money back. So
I think they're pretty good odds.
yeah, so I'm not worried about it, because I'd rather show people the confidence and take away the objection. And I know that if you show up and you're 2 feet in, you're going to get, a 100x guarantee. I'll give you a 10x guarantee all day long.
I've no doubt it. Cameron, I really appreciate your time. There's so much wisdom in there that this has been a great hour for me. Selfishly, not just for my listeners, and it's really it's inspiring me to, because I've heard you speak about the vision for the business before. It's not something I've done for my business. But I'm inspired now. I suppose maybe in the conversation, I've just got a better understanding of it. And I think it's something I need to start thinking about for the business, because I can really see the value. So I've no doubt there's been a great value for all our listeners. I really appreciate your time and wish you all the success in the future. And I hope your COO Alliance event starting this evening goes wonderful. No doubt it will.
It'll be great. Yeah. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Paul.